seen the show, you get the gist. Lesser known lost media. Here we go.
Welcome back, guys, to Lesser Known Lost Media, Volume 102. I am your host, Mr. Sean, and today we're going to cover 5 pieces of video game lost media. If you're new to the channel, lucky you. You have 101 pieces to watch after this, but how it works is I start with 4 family-friendly, safe-for-work pieces of lost media, take a brief break, and end with a 5th, spicier piece. So, let's begin. At number 1, we have Captain America and the Avengers Lost Build of canceled Japanese translation of NES game from 1991. Now, I am going to level with you guys. Something tells me I've covered this piece in a previous video, but I'm going to cover it again here because, again, when I was looking for pieces and I saw this one and I'm like, man, this sounds familiar, but you'll find out why I'm doing it again anyway here in a sec. Captain America and the Avengers is a Nintendo Entertainment System game based on Marvel's Avengers series, developed by Data East and released in December of 1991 in North America and Australia. Despite the game being developed by a Japanese company, it was not released in its country of origin. Japanese gaming magazine Weekly Famitsu had a small section of the game during its development, meaning it was likely planned to be released there. Its reasons for being cancelled is unknown. The game is a side-scrolling action-adventure where the player can choose between Captain America or Hawkeye, defeating enemies and well-known Marvel villains. The game is much different than its arcade original, only being able to play as 2 of the 4 Avengers characters. The game's prototype has not resurfaced online in any form, being ROMs or in secondhand auctions. Now, guys, I feel like I covered this before, and those of you that have been watching since the beginning will probably call me out on it, but I do want this one. This one speaks to me. One, because the Sega Genesis version, which was a direct port of the arcade, and actually much better than the NES version, was one of my absolute favorite games growing up, as was the arcade game. It's the first time I ever saw Captain America and learned who he was. You could play in the Genesis game as Iron Man, Vision, Hawkeye, or Captain America, and I absolutely love this game. And if you can see from the background I'm likely using, I've been playing Lego Marvel Superheroes again, and that definitely put this was the first, Marvel game. Well, actually, I guess it was the second, because the first one I ever really played was X-Men, because I did get that when I got my first ever console, a Sega Genesis. But, love Marvel games, love this one, even its crappier NES version, but I definitely, this game is so simplistic, I don't know why it would have ever been canceled. One person does every bit of voice acting in the American version, so I mean, you would just literally need one Japanese voice actor, and there's really not a lot of reading in the game. I mean, I guess there is like text for the dialogue, but it's just like, I don't know, there's literally no reason this game shouldn't have been released in Japan. So I don't know, maybe someday we'll find that ROM of what the Japanese thing would have looked like, just even if it was just to see who they got to do the voice acting. Coming in at number 2, we have D-Team, The Kidnapping of Professor Zig, which is lost builds of an unreleased multi-platform action-adventure game from 2012. So, D-Team, The Kidnapping of Professor Zig is an unreleased action-adventure game developed by Big Moon Entertainment, now known as Saber Porto, which planned to release in May of 2012 on the Wii, PC, iOS, and Android. It was also slated for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 releases in December of that year. Aside from screenshots, no gameplay videos or trailers for this game have ever been released. The game was based on the Portuguese animated series Tic Tac Tales, which was also produced by Big Moon. An evil wizard named Zarabin kidnaps Professor Zig, plotting to use the professor's latest discovery to create a weapon that would enslave the world. Meanwhile, General Doom advances with Zarabin's army of Gargs conquering land, air, and sea. To try and save the world, the billionaire Mr. D calls upon his team of heroes, known as the D-Team, to defeat Zarabin and rescue Professor Zig. Again, this one is interesting to me, mainly due to the fact that it is a licensed property based on something I have no knowledge of. You know, a cartoon, I guess, from Portugal. And I'll be honest, not only do I not know about Portugal's cartoons, I know basically nothing about Portugal. I don't know its culture. I don't even know its landscape and topography. I know nothing about the country. And so to see this piece of lost media from a Portuguese property was very interesting to me and leads me to believe reminds me I need to learn a bit more about the world, something we Americans forget to do a lot. At number 3, we have Casino Royale, a lost build of a canceled movie tie-in video game from the James Bond film of the same name, circa 2006. So, Casino Royale was a planned tie-in video game to the James Bond film of the same name, as stated previously. The game was planned to be on the PlayStation 3, where it would serve as a launch title in Europe, Xbox 360, and also Nintendo Wii. The game also would have been developed by EA and was set to release on November 17, 2006, the same day the film would release in theaters in the United Kingdom. Now, on January 30th of 2006, EA confirmed that a Casino Royale game was in development. The James Bond fan website, mi6-hq.com, had confirmed that 3D models and concept art were already done and that the game had begun development before the James Bond video game From Russia with Love hit store shelves in 2005. Somehow I missed that game. The development of Casino Royale was very short-lived, as on May 3, 2006, an article from Variety had shown that MGM and EA had ended their contract to make James Bond games, due in part to the poor sales of From Russia with Love. Also on May 3, 2006, MGM and Activision had struck a deal that would allow Activision to make future James Bond games through 2014. The shift in the contract would not kick in until September of 2007. This prompted Activision to not pick up the Casino Royale tie-in game. Casino Royale was rumored to have been around 15% complete before its cancellation, and the game would eventually see the movie itself would eventually see a partial video game adaptation in 2008 as part of the Quantum of Solace video game. Now, as to the gameplay, Casino Royale would have had players play as, you guessed it, James Bond from a third-person position as they would navigate the events of the movie. Voiceovers would have been provided by the actors who played their respective roles in the film. The concept art showed that has surfaced showed the film's final act in which James Bond attempted to save his love, Vesper Lynd, from drowning while a building collapses in Venice. Now, while I never owned an N64 and therefore never got really good at GoldenEye like most of my friends did, I did like that game. I did grow up playing it with friends, and I'm also a huge James Bond fan. And, I definitely, I'll be perfectly honest, guys, hot take. Daniel Craig is my favorite James Bond. I think he was the most realistic of what a real-life James Bond might actually be like. And so when I saw Casino Royale, I was like, man, this is amazing. And I would have loved to have seen a game of this, though, James Bond games have a somewhat mixed history about how good they actually are. But so the thing is, I would have loved to at least see what they could have done with it. I mean, most people, their fondest memories of Bond time is GoldenEye. And no offense to GoldenEye, but I actually loved, my favorite was Nightfire's multiplayer. I loved how you could have bots, how they had personalities, how it had just as many characters as why can't I think of the name? GoldenEye, sorry. But also, you had things like Oddjob actually had his hat. And but Bond games are fun, guys. They're just fun. The movies are fun, and I would have loved to have gotten a game based on the film that really just, in my opinion, revitalized the James Bond franchise. Alright guys, at number 4 we have Chaos Control, which is a lost build of a cancelled Sega CD port of a full motion video shooter game, existence unconfirmed but thought to be from 1996. So, Chaos Control is a rail shooter developed by Infogrames. Infogrames? Is that spelled right, or is that a... I'm going to go with, according to the picture. Infogrames Multimedia. That's a weird name. But by Infogrames for this Philips CDI, and was ported to the Sega Saturn in 1995. There had been plans for a Sega CD port as advertised in Edge magazine, but it never saw release. Now, the game is a rail shooter where the player must shoot down enemies in front of the screen, all of which is in front of pre-rendered footage. Every version of the game uses a light gun controller, and it is unclear whether or not the Sega CD version would have used any peripheral. The game would have also likely have suffered a lower frame rate due to the console's smaller space. Now, the game's prototype has not surfaced online, whether it be gameplay footage or a ROM release. The game was likely canceled due to the game's frame rate being very slow, and such was moved to the then upcoming Sega Saturn system, which still had a much lower frame rate than the original Philips CDI version. But this has not been confirmed by any developer. In fact, the port itself has not been confirmed to have had any development done whatsoever. Guys, I feel like we are blessed in this day and age where, ultimately which way you want to play a game comes down to either do you want to play it on a PC where it's just known it's probably going to be the best, and I say this as a filthy console gaming peasant. Yes, PC is superior. I enjoy playing on a console, but it's really, do you want to be playing on PlayStation? Do you want to be playing on Xbox? Which controller do you like better? Or are you a Nintendo fanboy who's always going to go with whatever the latest Switch or whatever it is? Ultimately, we have PC and then 3 options, and they're all 4 are going to succeed. But that wasn't really the case back in the day. It was the transition from cartridge to CD was fraught with problems, and ultimately, like, the one person that really came out on top in that was Sony at the time, and then later Xbox. But Nintendo, the N64 was going to have a CD attachment that Sony was going to make for Nintendo. That deal fell through. Sony decided, hey, we've done all this work, let's just make our own console. The N64 disk drive never really became a thing. And then also, Sega was trying something different, similar with Sega CD, and then later they also did Sega Saturn, which I believe had discs, though. The Dreamcast still, I believe, did the Dreamcast have discs? I don't know. I didn't have a Dreamcast, but yeah, it was just the transition from cartridge to CD was definitely hectic. And I remember I was this close to getting a Sega Dreamcast rather than a PlayStation before my dad just ended up bringing home a PlayStation, because I was like, that's pretty cool. But then ultimately, that system was great but failed. And I don't know, I just think it's interesting how many ways in it used to really be like, hey, we have this game, but we want to port it, but the hardware just isn't there. And again, I'm rambling, but it's just very cool and very fascinating to me. All right, guys, brief break before we get into that final piece of Lost Media, the spicy piece. But I just want to say, hey, thank you for watching up until this point. If you've done so, please click like, leave a comment, subscribe. Also, consider becoming a member or Patreon patron. We're definitely trying to grow the channel. We are trying to grow to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So any help you can give with that, whether by subscribing yourself or just sharing the video around, as well as the like and the comment, would be greatly appreciated. Also, please check out eBay. I sell a bunch of customized miniatures, and I'm making more all the time. Also, Drive-Thru RPG, I make Call of Cthulhu modules. If that's your thing, you can find some of my work over there, and I'd be absolutely delighted if you would go and give it a look. And I guess with that being said, let's move to today's spicy piece. At number 5 today, we have Leisure Suit Larry 8, Lust in Space, a lost build of a canceled PC adventure game sequel from circa 1998 to 1999. The Leisure Suit Larry series, one known for, if you're just a horny little gamer who really needs that level of interactiveness and slight disappointment in your adult material, then Leisure Suit Larry might be for you. Now, Leisure Suit Larry 8, Lust in Space, also known as Leisure Suit Larry Explores Uranus, was the planned 8th installment in the Leisure Suit Larry series by AI Low, and it was announced in 1998, and it was to be developed by Sierra Online. However, in 1999, Sierra announced that it was canceling the project and I think that's Al Low's contract due to the major reorganization of the company. However, in the 2010s, the Leisure Suit Larry license was obtained by 2 other game companies who made 3 more installments: Leisure Suit Larry Reloaded, which was a remake of the first game in the series, Leisure Suit Larry Wet Dreams Don't Dry, and Leisure Suit Larry Wet Dreams Dry Twice, with Al Lowe involved in the development of the former. So the revival of the project remains a possibility. Now, what do we know of what the game was meant to be? Well, here's the storyline. At the end of the previous installment, Leisure Suit Larry 7, Love for Sale, S-A-I-L, the protagonist Larry Laffer, who was at the time aboard a cruise ship, was abducted by an alien spacecraft. In 2010, Al Lowe revealed his ideas for the plot of Larry 8. So after Larry was taken away in the spaceship at the end of Leisure Suit Larry 7, Love for Sale, he awoke to find himself in what he considered heaven, a world of disco balls, 70s music, and beautiful women who constantly wanted him to make love to them. What's not to like? Well, these Amazonian warrior women were from a superior civilization light years away. Long ago, their modern technology enabled them to live forever, which meant they could no longer have children without overpopulating their planet into disaster. That made the male of their species redundant. Because these women were the warriors, they killed off all their males. Now they wanted to expand to other planets, and for that, they needed to increase their numbers. For that, they needed males. But where to find them? Why not look on the planet they chose to conquer first, Earth? Picking up transmissions from the PMS Bouncy, they learned of the Thighs Man's Trophy competition to choose the sexiest man alive. Who better to kidnap to breed with their women than the world's sexiest man? Besides, after hundreds of years without sex, they were horny as hell. But there was no way they could allow Larry to see their alien bodies and hideous faces, so via the always handy anal probe, they discovered Larry's true feelings, what he liked and disliked. Then they brainwashed him into seeing his surroundings and them as that. Thus their ship appeared to Larry to be a wonderful casino, disco, spa, etc., while the ugly female aliens appeared to him as ideal women. Their spastic noises and clicks became 70s disco music inside Larry's brain. But eventually he would learn the truth. They were using him to father a generation of children that only looked human. A battalion of aliens human enough to blend in on Earth before taking control. When he escaped their mind control, he realized he had to figure out the truth, find a way to stop them, and literally save the planet. Of course, all this would have been done in a satirical way, while poking fun at the thousands of other games that have used that theme before. Wow. Some fun information about this game. The game was the first installment in the series to be made in 3D. A short promo video demonstrating a 3D model of Larry was released in 1998. Now, at least some parts of the story was to take place aboard the cruise ship in Leisure Suit Larry 7, Love for Sale. If the player examined the upper decks in Atrium, he would get the message, "Those decks are reserved for Leisure Suit Larry 8, Lust in Space. Don't try going there this game." So apparently they had already had the next game planned. I mean, again, based on the ending, definitely. Allegedly, the game was to have the free rotating camera feature, which would have been unusual at the time. It also was to include CyberVox 2000 and CyberScan 2000 features that were also present in Leisure Suit Larry 7, which allowed the players to insert their voice recordings and photographs of themselves into the game. Now, could this game at some point get made? Well, in regards to a possible resurrection, in the late 2000s, the rights to Leisure Suit Larry and its franchise were acquired by Codemasters, who licensed the franchise to Replay Games, a company founded by Sierra veteran Paul Trowell. Paul rehired Al Lowe to work on the remake of the first Leisure Suit Larry, which again was released in the summer of 2013, and Al had plans to remake all the installments in the original series with hopes that Codemasters would then allow them to restart work on Lust in Space. However, at the end of 2013, Lowe left Replay and returned to retirement because Trowell was convicted for showing a adult video to a minor. Of course. After the incident, the Codemasters took the license away from Replay and gave it to a German game company, Crazy Bunch, who released 2 other installments in the series, again these being Leisure Suit Larry Wet Dreams Don't Dry in 2018, and Leisure Suit Larry Wet Dreams Dry Twice in 2020. However, the production of either did not involve Al Lowe, so it remains unclear whether they would be interested in bringing Lust in Space back to the table. I find the concept of prawn games to be kind of ridiculous in this day and age. It's just like, it always reminds me of playing Dungeons and Dragons as the DM, and one of my players for a long time wanted to seduce every female NPC he came across, and I was like, dude, why? He's like, come on, man. Even when he was unsuccessful, he would whine about it, and I had to look at him once and go, dude, it's just me doing a funny voice. You're not actually getting laid. And that's kind of how I feel about these kinds of games, that it just kind of goes to a mentality that, I don't know, I feel like would have diminishing returns and, would not have any type of, real motivation to play through its entirety. But Leisure Suit Larry has survived. It has had multiple iterations. It has been on PC, on console. I mean, it's essentially the only one of these things that seems to have a big enough fan base to keep going. And for that, I mean, absolute respect. Do I still think it's just a game for gooners? Absolutely. But, if that's your thing, then maybe one day you'll get to play it. And that's the video, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. Again, remember to click that like button. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and be sure to leave a comment. If you can't think of a comment, just type in 8 would be great. Let's type in that. Let's reference our final thing. That way I know you got all the way to this part. 8 would be great is what you should type in if you can't think of a comment. Again, guys, I'm always looking for pieces that maybe I don't know about. The more obscure, the better. So if you have a suggestion, be sure to leave that in the comments. And until next time, everybody, I'm Mr. Sean. This is Mr. Sean Productions. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Lesser Known Lost Media. And I sincerely hope that you alpha great day and an even beta tomorrow. Bye-bye.